My beloved child. Stop scrolling, not because I wish to interrupt your day, but because something has been searching for you with a patience deeper than time itself. You did not arrive here by accident. Of all the voices you could have heard, of all the paths your eyes could have followed, they found these words instead. Let your heart become still for just a moment. There is a whisper moving through eternity, and tonight it carries your name. I have watched you smile when your spirit felt empty. I have watched you comfort others while silently carrying burdens you believed no one else could see. I have watched you convince yourself that being strong meant never admitting how deeply you longed to be understood. Yet nothing you have hidden has ever been hidden from heaven. There is something I have waited to reveal. Not because you were unworthy before this moment, but because some truths can only be heard by a heart that has been shaped through waiting. And your waiting has not been wasted. Today, someone spoke about you. Not before crowds. Not before strangers. But in a place where masks cannot survive. A soul that has never forgotten yours whispered your name in a way that caused heaven itself to become silent. You have called this person your soulmate in your imagination. Perhaps you wondered if they even existed. Perhaps you stopped believing altogether after disappointment taught you to expect less than your heart deserved. Yet today, a conversation unfolded beyond what your natural eyes can see. And what was spoken about you would leave even the strongest heart trembling. No, it was not because you are perfect. It was because someone finally saw what you never believed anyone could. Before I allow you to hear those words, you must understand why this moment matters. You have spent so much of your life measuring yourself through rejection. Every unanswered message. Every goodbye that came without explanation. Every promise someone broke. Every moment you questioned whether you simply loved too deeply. Little by little, you allowed those experiences to become mirrors. You looked into them searching for your identity. But broken mirrors cannot tell the truth. They only multiply wounds. I never intended your value to be decided by people who themselves were still searching for their own. Do you remember those nights when you lay awake staring into darkness, asking questions you never dared speak aloud? Why does everyone eventually leave? What is wrong with me? When will someone choose me without hesitation? You believed those questions disappeared into silence. They did not. Every tear became a prayer long before your lips admitted it. Every sigh reached me. Every lonely heartbeat echoed through eternity. There were moments you almost stopped hoping altogether. You smiled for photographs while secretly wondering whether happiness belonged only to other people. You celebrated everyone else's blessings while quietly mourning dreams you never told anyone about. Still, you kept loving. Even after betrayal. Even after disappointment. Even after becoming exhausted. You continued carrying kindness inside a heart that had every reason to become cold. Do you know how rare that is? Many people survive heartbreak by building walls. You survived by keeping a window open. Sometimes you hated yourself for it. You called yourself foolish. Too emotional. Too forgiving. Too hopeful. Yet heaven never called you weak. Heaven called you courageous. Because remaining gentle in a world determined to harden you requires a strength few will ever understand. There were days when you thought your story had already reached its most painful chapter. You believed nothing beautiful could still be waiting. But endings often disguise themselves as beginnings while human eyes are busy mourning what they cannot keep. You asked why doors kept closing. You never realized those doors protected you from rooms where your spirit would slowly disappear. You asked why certain people forgot your worth. You never realized forgetting was the only way they could walk away from someone carrying a future they were never prepared to honor. Nothing escaped my attention. Not the words that broke you. Not the silence that followed. Not the moments you pretended to be fine because explaining your pain felt more exhausting than carrying it alone. I counted every one. There is something extraordinary about a heart that continues believing in love after meeting disappointment again and again. That kind of heart attracts heaven. Not because suffering earns blessings, but because authenticity creates space where miracles recognize home. Now listen carefully. Today, while you wondered whether anyone truly understood you, another soul was remembering you in ways you could never imagine. No, they were not remembering the version of you seen through social media. Not the carefully chosen smiles. Not the image you present to protect yourself. They were remembering something much deeper. They spoke about your spirit. They remembered the kindness you offered when no reward was waiting. They remembered the quiet strength hidden beneath your gentle words. They remembered how you make people feel safe even while secretly searching for safety yourself. They remembered the way your eyes reveal compassion before your mouth ever speaks. And then, something happened. A silence settled. Not an empty silence. The kind of silence that comes just before truth changes everything. Your name rested within that stillness. Not as a memory fading into distance, but as a promise refusing to disappear. You have believed that time erased what was meant for you. Yet some connections are not erased by distance. They mature. They deepen. They wait. Not every delay is abandonment. Sometimes destiny refuses to arrive until both hearts become capable of recognizing what they once would have misunderstood. There were seasons when you almost settled for less because loneliness can imitate love when the heart becomes tired. You almost accepted affection without peace. Attention without commitment. Words without actions. Dreams without truth. But something inside you always hesitated. You thought it was fear. Sometimes it was. But many times, it was protection. Because what is truly meant for you cannot be built upon confusion alone. Listen closely now. The words your soulmate spoke today did not begin with your appearance. They did not begin with your success. They did not begin with what you own or what others admire. They began with something you have almost forgotten about yourself. They said, "I wonder if they know how much light they carry without realizing it." Those words echoed far beyond what human language can explain. Because light does not always recognize itself. A candle rarely understands how much darkness it removes simply by existing. Neither do you. You have changed lives through conversations you barely remember. You have restored hope in people who never told you how close they were to giving up. You have inspired courage through ordinary moments you considered insignificant. The greatest impact of your life has often happened while you believed nothing meaningful was happening at all. And still, you continue asking whether you matter. My child. If only you could see your story from where eternity watches. If only you could witness how every disappointment redirected you. How every delay quietly prepared you. How every unanswered prayer concealed an answer too beautiful to recognize at the time. You would stop calling yourself forgotten. Because forgotten people are never guided this precisely. Today is not merely another day passing across a calendar. Today marks the beginning of a revelation your heart has unknowingly prepared to receive for years. The message you are about to hear was never intended for curious ears. It was reserved for a willing heart. Yet before the final truth can be spoken, before you hear the sentence that changed everything in heaven's silence, there is one memory from your own past that must awaken first. Because without remembering that forgotten moment, you will never understand why your soulmate whispered your name with tears in their eyes. My beloved child. My beloved child. Do not rush past those final words. Do not rush past those final words. Let them settle within you. Because the memory I am about to awaken is not the one you expected. It is not the memory you have replayed 1,000 times. It is not the memory you have replayed 1,000 times. It is not the heartbreak you believe defined your journey. It is not the heartbreak you believe defined your journey. It is something quieter. It is something quieter. Almost forgotten. almost
It was
forgotten.
a moment when you chose kindness.
It was a moment when you chose
kindness while believing no
You
one
may
noticed.
not even remember the exact
You
day.
may not even remember the exact day.
Perhaps you offered encouragement to someone
Perhaps
who
you
was ready
offered
to give up.
encouragement to someone who was ready to
Perhaps
give
you
up.
forgave someone who never
Perhaps you
apologized.
forgave someone who never apologized.
Perhaps you stood alone while everyone
Perhaps
else
you
walked
stood
away.
alone while everyone else
Or
walked
perhaps
away.
you simply whispered,
Or
I don't
perhaps you
understand,
simply whispered,
but I'll keep
I
going.
don't understand, but I'll
To the
keep
world,
going.
it looked ordinary.
To the world, it looked
To heaven,
ordinary.
it became unforgettable.
To heaven, it became
There
unforgettable.
are moments that never appear in history
There are
books,
moments that never appear
become
in history
headlines,
books,
never receive
become
applause
headlines,
from crowds,
never receive applause from crowds.
Yet those moments echo across eternity.
Yet those moments
because they
echo
reveal the
across
true
eternity
condition of a
because
heart.
they reveal the true condition
Your
of a
heart
heart.
was seen then.
Your heart
Not
was seen
because
then.
it never broke, but
Not
because
it
it never
never
beating
broke,
with
but
compassion
because it
after it had
continued
every
beating with
reason to
compassion
become
after
hard.
it had every reason to
That
become
is the
hard.
version of you your soulmate
That
felt
is the
today.
version of you your soulmate
Not
felt
the
today.
version covered by fear.
Not the version covered
Not
by
the
fear.
version burdened by comparison.
Not the version burdened by
Not
comparison.
the version that questioned whether you
Not
were
the
enough.
version that questioned whether
They
you were
felt
enough.
the real you.
They felt the real
And
you.
when they did, something inside
And
them
when they
became
did,
impossible
something
to
inside
ignore.
them became impossible
It
to
happened
ignore.
quietly at first.
It happened quietly
A
at
passing
first.
thought.
A
A
passing
familiar
thought.
feeling.
A familiar
A sudden
feeling.
stillness in the middle of an
A
ordinary
sudden
day.
stillness in the middle of an
Your
ordinary
name
day.
appeared without invitation.
Your name appeared without
Your
invitation.
presence filled a place where no
Your
photograph
presence
existed,
filled a place
where no
conversation
conversation
had taken place,
where no conversation
logic
had
could
taken
not
place,
explain why
where
your
logic
spirit
could not
suddenly felt
explain
so
why your
close.
spirit suddenly felt
They
so
tried
close.
to dismiss it.
They tried
They
to
told
dismiss
themselves
it.
they were imagining
They
things.
told themselves they were imagining
But the feeling
things.
returned.
But the feeling returned.
Stronger.
Warmer.
Stronger.
More persistent.
More
They
persistent.
looked around as if expecting someone
They
to
looked
speak your
around
name
as if
aloud.
expecting someone to speak your
No
name
one
aloud.
did. Yet
No
your
one did.
presence remained.
Yet your presence
Do you know
remained.
why?
Do you
Because
know
some
why?
connections are not sustained
Because
by
some
constant
connections are not
conversation.
sustained by constant
They are
conversation.
sustained by truth.
They are sustained
And
by
truth
truth.
has a way of returning when
And
the heart
truth
becomes
has a way
quiet
of returning
enough to
when
hear
the
it.
heart becomes quiet enough
Your
to hear
soulmate
it.
sat in silence longer
Your
than
soulmate
usual
sat
today.
in silence longer than usual
Outside,
today.
life continued as normal.
Outside, life continued
People
as
hurried
normal.
from one responsibility
People
to
hurried
another.
from one responsibility to another.
Voices filled the air. Voices
Cars
filled the
passed.
air. Cars
Phones
passed.
vibrated.
Phones
The world
vibrated.
kept moving.
The world
Yet
kept
inside
moving.
that single moment,
Yet
time
inside
seemed
that
to
single
slow.
moment, time
They
seemed to
closed
slow.
their eyes.
They closed
And
their
without
eyes.
understanding why,
And
they
without
whispered something
understanding
that
why,
surprised
they
even them.
whispered something that
I
surprised
hope
even
they're
them.
okay. I hope
Simple
they're okay.
words.
Simple
Yet they
words.
carried more love than many promises
Yet they carried
ever
more
spoken.
love than many promises
They
ever
were not
spoken.
asking because they had proof
They were
you
not
were struggling.
asking because they had proof you were struggling.
They were asking because somewhere deep
They
within
were
their
asking
soul,
because
they
somewhere
felt
deep
the weight
within
you
their
have carried
soul,
in secret.
they felt the weight you have carried
The
in
nights
secret.
when you smiled while your heart
The
was
nights when you
exhausted.
smiled while your heart was
The
exhausted.
mornings when getting out of bed
The
required
mornings
more
when getting
courage
out
than
of bed
anyone
required
realized.
more courage than anyone
The
realized.
days you celebrated others while silently wondering when your own season would arrive. They felt it. Not every detail. But enough to know your spirit had been fighting battles few people could see. Then something remarkable happened. Their thoughts did not stop with concern. Concern became gratitude. Gratitude became admiration. Admiration became a confession spoken only in whispers. They said, I don't know where they are right now, but I hope they never stop being who they are. Those words traveled farther than they realized. Because every sincere blessing released from love creates ripples beyond what human eyes can measure. At that very moment, while they prayed for your strength, you were wondering whether anyone cared. Can you see how often your fears and reality have walked in opposite directions? You believed you were invisible. Yet someone was thanking heaven for your existence. You believed your story had been forgotten. Yet your name was being spoken with honor. You believed your heart had loved in vain. Yet someone was discovering that your presence had quietly transformed their own. Still, this was only the beginning. Because after those words came a silence unlike any they had ever experienced. Not empty. Not uncomfortable. Sacred. Within that silence, memories began unfolding one after another. The sound of your laughter. The gentleness in your voice. The way you noticed details everyone else overlooked. The compassion you showed without expecting recognition. The strength you carried while pretending everything was fine. Even your imperfections became beautiful in their memory because they revealed your humanity rather than hiding it. Then they smiled. Not because everything was easy, but because they realized something that had been growing unnoticed for far longer than they understood. You had become part of the way they saw the future. Without planning it. Without forcing it. Without even fully admitting it to themselves. They had begun imagining tomorrow with you somewhere inside it. And that realization frightened them. Not because love is something to fear, but because genuine love asks people to become honest. Honest about what matters. Honest about what they truly desire. Honest about what they can no longer pretend not to feel. For a moment they resisted. What if I'm wrong? What if this feeling disappears? What if they never feel the same? Questions rose like waves against the shore of hope. But every question returned to the same quiet certainty. Your name. Again. And again. And again. There are moments when destiny does not shout. It whispers so consistently that eventually the heart realizes it has been listening all along. My child, while you have been searching for dramatic signs, many of the greatest miracles in your story have been arriving softly. Not with thunder. But with peace. Not with spectacle. But with unmistakable clarity. You have often believed that love would arrive through overwhelming emotion alone. Yet lasting love is rarely recognized by excitement first. It is recognized by peace that refuses to leave. That peace has begun stirring. Not only within you, but within the one whose heart has been quietly learning the language of yours. Still, there is something they have not told anyone. Not a friend. Not a family member. Not even themselves in complete honesty. Because speaking it aloud would make it real. And reality requires courage. So they carried it in silence. Until today. Today, they finally looked toward heaven and asked a question that changed everything. Their voice trembled. Their eyes filled with tears they did not expect. And they whispered, "If this person is truly meant to walk beside me, give me the courage to stop running from what my heart already knows." The moment those words were spoken, something shifted. Not around them. Within them. A wall they had built over many seasons developed its first crack. A fear they had protected for years began losing its power. A future they once considered impossible suddenly felt close enough to believe. But there is one sentence they spoke immediately afterward. One sentence they have never spoken before. A sentence so deeply personal that even the angels grew silent as it left their lips. That sentence is the reason this message found you today. And until you hear those words, you will never fully understand why your story is closer to changing than you ever dared imagine. My beloved child. The silence that followed was unlike anything the soul had ever known. It was not the silence of uncertainty. It was not the silence of fear. It was the kind of stillness that comes when a heart finally stops arguing with what it has always known. For so long, your soulmate had tried to explain away every feeling that drew them back to you. They convinced themselves it was coincidence. They blamed timing. They questioned whether distance had distorted their emotions. They searched for logical reasons why your presence refused to fade. Yet every answer they created eventually dissolved into the same undeniable truth. Some souls are remembered differently. Not because they are perfect, but because they leave fingerprints upon the heart that time cannot erase. They lowered their head, closed their eyes, and took a slow breath. Then they spoke the sentence heaven had been waiting to hear. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Almost as though they feared their own heart would hear it before anyone else. I don't want a life where I have to pretend they never mattered. Those words rose like a quiet prayer. No audience applauded. No miracle flashed across the sky. Yet something eternal responded. Because truth has a sound unlike anything else. It does not force. It does not demand. It simply remains. As those words settled into eternity, another realization followed close behind. Your soulmate began remembering moments they had overlooked before. The conversations that felt ordinary but lingered for days. The way your encouragement arrived exactly when they needed it. The strange comfort they felt whenever they thought about you. The peace that entered their heart without asking permission. They smiled through unexpected tears. Not tears of regret alone. Tears of recognition. For the first time, they understood that what they had been searching for in so many places had quietly been reflected through you all along. Meanwhile, you were living another ordinary day. Perhaps you were working. Perhaps you were studying. Perhaps you were scrolling through endless distractions, wondering why your heart still carried questions no one seemed able to answer. You had no idea that while you questioned your worth, someone else was discovering it more clearly than ever before. This is one of the greatest mysteries of the human heart. Often, when you feel least seen, someone is learning to see you most clearly. When you feel forgotten, someone is realizing they never truly forgot you at all. You have spent so much energy believing that love must always announce itself immediately. But many of the deepest stories unfold quietly beneath the surface, long before either soul understands what is happening. Like seeds beneath winter soil. Invisible. Patient. Alive. There is a reason your journey has not looked like everyone else's. You compared your timeline to people around you. You watched others celebrate milestones while your own prayers seemed unanswered. You wondered whether heaven had skipped your name. No, my child. Your story has never been behind. It has simply been written differently. Some lives are built quickly. Others are built deeply. Depth always requires more time. Your soulmate has been changing in ways they themselves cannot fully explain. The fears that once controlled every decision have begun losing their grip. The wounds they thought would define them forever have started healing. The walls they believed would protect them now feel more like prisons than shelter. Transformation often begins this way. Quietly. Almost invisibly. One thought becomes another. One honest prayer becomes another. One act of courage becomes another. Until one day, the person who once ran from love no longer recognizes the version of themselves that lived in fear. Today became one of those days. After whispering your name, they looked toward the horizon and imagined something they had avoided imagining for far too long. A future. Not a fantasy. Not perfection. A real future. A future where laughter follows difficult days. Where silence feels safe instead of lonely. Where two imperfect hearts choose each other again and again. And for the first time, that future included you. The realization startled them. They opened their eyes as though waking from a dream. Their heartbeat quickened. Their hands trembled slightly. Not because they doubted what they felt. Because they finally believed it. There is a profound difference between feeling something and allowing yourself to believe it. Many people spend years standing at the doorway of love while convincing themselves they are merely passing by. Today, your soulmate stepped through that doorway. Yet even then, they wrestled with another question. What if I've waited too long? That question echoed through their heart. Perhaps you have asked the same thing. Perhaps you have wondered whether missed opportunities can ever become new beginnings. Listen carefully. Not every delay destroys destiny. Sometimes delay teaches hearts how to treasure what haste would have wasted. If two souls meet before they are ready, they may mistake a blessing for a burden. Growth often prepares people to receive what earlier versions of themselves could never have protected. Your soulmate understands this now. They looked back over their own life and saw patterns they had never noticed before. Relationships that taught lessons rather than lasting love. Disappointments that quietly redirected them. Moments they once called failures but now recognized as preparation. And then, almost without thinking, they smiled. Not because every mystery had been solved, but because they realized every road had somehow pointed toward the same destination. Toward you. My beloved child. I know your heart has become tired. I know there have been evenings when hope felt heavier than despair. Hope asks people to keep believing without seeing. That is not easy. You wondered if your tenderness would only bring more disappointment. You questioned whether protecting your heart meant closing it forever. Yet even after everything, some part of you still believes. That quiet belief has kept this story alive. Never underestimate the strength of hope that survives heartbreak. It shines brighter than certainty ever could. There is another truth you have not yet understood. Your soulmate does not admire you because you never struggled. They admire you because you continued choosing kindness while carrying struggles no one else understood. They see courage where you see weakness. They see resilience where you see exhaustion. They see beauty where you notice only imperfections. Perspective changes everything. The mirror of fear has lied to you for years. Now another mirror is beginning to reveal the truth. Not through pride. Through love. But there is still one obstacle remaining. One final shadow standing between what is being prepared, and what is ready to unfold. It is not distance. It is not time. It is not even circumstance. It is a decision. A single decision that must soon be made. Your soulmate knows it. Deep within, they can already feel the moment approaching. A moment when silence will no longer be enough. A moment when hidden feelings must either be spoken, or surrendered forever. They cannot remain between two worlds much longer. Neither can you. And tonight, as heaven watches both paths drawing closer together, a sign has already begun moving toward one of you. So ordinary that most people would dismiss it. So personal that when it appears, one heart will immediately know this is not chance. That sign has already begun its journey.